In this video, we'll discuss a few points of structure for history essays. An essay isn't just a bunch of words. I mean, it is a bunch of words, but it's words arranged for a purpose. And that purpose is to make an argument in support of your interpretation of the evidence. What we're doing when we write about history is making a case for what we think the evidence tells us. That means our essays about history don't involve the recitation of facts, because there aren't any facts, only flawed, subjective, limited fragments of a past we probably weren't present for. Instead, our essays about history involve a problem, a thesis, and the evidence to support that thesis. The problem is the specific question you're trying to answer in this essay. Let's use the example of Hannibal and how he deployed elephants against the Romans. In the Second Punic War, Rome's greatest enemy, the Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca, used ranks of elephants to try to terrify and dismay the Roman armies. The Romans weren't so easily frightened, and in the end, the Carthaginian forces were thoroughly defeated, elephants or no. Was Hannibal using elephants against the Romans a good idea? That's our problem, the question we're setting out to answer. Was Hannibal using elephants against the Romans a good idea? And that's where we start our introduction, briefly setting the stage, then putting forward the problem to be discussed. You don't need to shovel in a lot of background or include any of your evidence at this stage. The backstory isn't necessary, and the details can come later. Just a one-sentence statement of the context. Hannibal used war elephants, it didn't go well, and the question, was he nuts to use elephants at all? In your intro, after stating the problem, you want to show that your question has more than one possible answer. Otherwise, you're not arguing anything, and so you're not writing a helpful essay. If your question were, was Hannibal Barca a general who fought the Romans? That's not a good starting point because nobody would have a reason or basis in the evidence for arguing anything but yes. There's no point. But if your question were, was Hannibal Barca a good general? Well, there you could make a case from the evidence either way. People could argue that for days. So after our statement of the problem, we show that there are different possible positions to show that this is a valid and useful question to explore. Then you complete your introduction with a thesis. A thesis is a statement of opinion that someone could disagree with. It's your answer to the question you just put forward, an opinion you will then support with evidence in the body of your paper. This thesis shapes the rest of your paper. It's the statement of what you need to convince the reader of using evidence and argument. It's in your interest, therefore, to make it specific so as to show yourself the exact path of what you need to do in the rest of the essay. Don't just say, Hannibal was an idiot. Say, Hannibal was an idiot because X, Y, and Z. Then the rest of your paper is right in front of you. The rest of your paper is X, Y, and Z. Remember, a thesis is a statement of opinion that someone could disagree with. Think of it as one side of a public debate, like you're on a debating stage, and your debating opponent will speak next and take the other side. If you end your intro saying, Hannibal was a general who fought the Romans, you're not taking a position that could be opposed, and you're not putting forward anything that could be debated or that needs to be discussed or supported with evidence. Likewise, you may have been taught to end your introduction with something bland like, this paper will discuss Hannibal's use of elephants and explore their use against the Romans. This isn't as useful because it doesn't actually tell us what you intend to argue, only the topic which you've already brought up. Be specific in what you intend to prove in this essay. After that comes the body of your paper, where you discuss the evidence you're using to support your thesis. You need 3 reasons why your thesis is true. That's why I recommend being specific in your thesis and saying, I believe such and so because X, Y, and Z. That gives you 3 sections to the body of your paper, 1 for each reason. Define each section by starting with an assertion. In my Hannibal thesis, I say that using elephants against the Romans was misguided, not because elephants were a bad idea, but because the Romans would adapt to their use. That gives me 3 sections, 3 things I need to show in this paper. In this case, that's war elephants were useful otherwise, Romans were adaptable generally, Romans adapted to the elephants. So, my first section is about war elephants being useful otherwise, the first of my reasons why the thesis is true. I start by stating that. Start each section with an assertion. That tells you what you need to show in this section, and it tells the reader that too. Then, first describe your evidence, then discuss what that evidence shows and how it demonstrates your assertion. Evidence doesn't stand alone for the reasons we went through earlier. You need evidence, and you need interpretation of that evidence. These should be about equal in size. Don't spend a paragraph describing a passage from the Epic of Gilgamesh and then tack on one sentence at the end. This shows the goddess Ishtar was attracted to Gilgamesh. That's not interpretation, that's a caption. You see what I'm saying? Your job is to lay out for the reader what the evidence reveals in relation to your problem and your thesis, your overall argument. What you need in each section is a paragraph or so describing your evidence, and then another paragraph where you talk about what you think that evidence is telling us about that time and place we're trying to understand, which is the whole point of what we're doing here. We're trying to understand a place and time. You have 3 reasons why, so your next section is your next reason. It follows the same way: assertion, evidence, discussion. Third reason, same: assertion, evidence, discussion. You also want to consider the counter-arguments, what someone would say to disagree with you. The example I usually give is Louis XIV and the revocation of the Edict of Nantes. Say you wrote a paper extolling the brilliance of Louis XIV, talking about how he was a great king and improved France in 5 different ways. An informed reader would be thinking, that's great, but what about the revocation of the Edict of Nantes, which led to the torture and expulsion of the French Protestants, the Huguenots, and immense damage to France's economy and culture? You get to the end, make a great case, listed all these successes for Louis, and finish with a flourish and a bow, and it doesn't matter because the reader is still thinking, but what about the Edict of Nantes? By not addressing the main counter-argument to your thesis, you've completely undermined your entire paper, preventing your reader from being convinced of your argument. Find the critical argument against your thesis, and if it's a problem, show and discuss the evidence that counters it. Then you'll have a truly effective paper. Finally, you need a strong conclusion. The conclusion is important because that's where you take your 3 reasons and show how they demonstrate the validity of your thesis, why the reader should buy what you're selling. Briefly step through your 3 assertions and make a final argument for how they show that your answer to the question you posed at the start is the answer that makes the most sense and best fits the available evidence we have. That's what historians do every day. And that's what you're doing here. If you are unsure how to do any of the things discussed in this video or that are required for your essay, or if you have questions or things that you want to try out or things that you're not sure about, talk to your professor in office hours, by email. Try to flesh it out before you submit the paper, and that way everything works out better. So use your instructor as a resource, and good luck on your assignment.